Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It is your Caped Crusader Cody, and we are keeping it geekly with our returning guest, Christopher Michael. We're here to break down Crit, Caffeinated Chaos, a D&D adventure story, and more. And holy crap, dude, you were interview number 10. It is officially interview 181.
Oh, heck, wow. That's crazy.
What's been up? You know, how have you been? One successful Kickstarter campaign later, I have issue 5 in my hand. Very excited. This was such an awesome read, man. I can't tell you how excited I am to get you back on the show.
Oh man, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm glad you liked the book. So what has been going on? Well, finished book 5. That one was super long. That was a 60 plus page book. You know, when I first set out to do that, it was going to be 2 books. It was going to be 5 and 6. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't find a good breaking point in the story to make that happen. And so before the book launched, I said, screw it. It's going to be a big book. I can't do anything about that. And just ran with it. The covers came out immaculate. My printer did an amazing job on those. And I was able to actually start our next series in the back of that. So Mr. Wizard and Friends did debut in the back of book 5. So I'm really excited about that as well. It's another D&D campaign that we have that I wanted to bring to life. So that exists as a TV show within Crit. That way we don't have 2 different titles going at the same time.
I love that. Yeah. I love it, dude.
They like that. I wanted an ecosystem, and I really want anything that we publish to be like D&D related or, you know, written, have that element, because I think that's something that's key to us and our process. And we were able to put together a script that I enjoyed. So that one is much more chaotic than the one we had, than Crit, which is saying a lot because Crit's pretty chaotic.
Yeah. So speaking of Crit, you know, give us a little bit of a breakdown of, you know, who you are, your role in this comic, and, you know, a basic concept of what it's about. Okay.
Well, I am it's tough because I'm not really a writer. So I'm the dungeon master of our game. So I create the concept of the story, and then my players do. You know, we play the game, so it's very organic. I'm the creator, I'm the artist, I'm the letterer, and on book 6 I am the colorist as well. I'm taking over colors, so I'm doing everything in book 6. A couple of the guys do participate in the editing and organizing of the book. So our process is a lot different than a traditional comic book. I record the sessions, and then I storyboard according to that recording. So I have to go in and listen to 6 hours of, you know, tomfoolery and edit out what doesn't need to be in the book. You know, the hey, this is what I did this week, because we only play once a month. So one person will start talking about something they've done. You know, you have those
hanging with the boys, you know, I get it.
Right. Some of that conversation does get into the book as conversation between the characters if there's a place for it. If there's not and it doesn't fit, then I cut it. And then I'll edit some of the action, because like in the current book, issue 6, 2 of the players decided they wanted to go do something else. And what they wanted to do wound up being a dead end, not going anywhere. And when we were going into the book 6, I asked the guys, I said, hey, this never goes anywhere. You literally go there, and the situation you encounter, I tried to open up this cool side story for them, and they never went back into it. And I said, so we're opening up a dead end for a reader. And they said, no, we can can that. We'll just put some of the cool parts from that into this story, like the dialogue pieces. So I play with a puzzle for a little bit. I storyboard it out, send it over to the guys. They give me some input on, you know, what they want to see perspective-wise, or maybe the flow. They might shoot some things back to me and change a face. Most recently, they said one of the smiles I had was too Jokerish, so I had to erase the face and do that. So it's a very organic kind of team that we have. But I do about 90% of the work.
No, I loved the dialogue. I thought the dialogue was a big selling point. It felt really organic. It felt like all these guys were friends, you know. So I thought that was awesome how it translated. You know, after our first interview and kind of like not really knowing what it, you know, because that was our first like break into it, but now getting the chance to read it, having talked to you already about it, and seeing that in action and knowing how you guys did it, I was able to kind of like break down the panels and be like, dude, this is so cool. Like, you know, the fact that you guys actually played this out, you know, all together and created this. Do you ever run into trouble with like any of the dialogue at all? Like, you know, when you're editing and trying to storyboard it, or does it all just kind of come natural?
A lot of the dialogue in there was set at the table. So it's already like organic and flows with the story. At the very end, when the book's completely done, before I go to lettering, we have a read through, and I get all the guys together on Discord, and I share the artwork. You know, sometimes we'll start when it's black and white, sometimes we'll wait till it's colored, depending on where we're at, and we just go page by page. And I have a script, so I send them a script and the breakdown, and we just look at the script together. It's a live document on Google Drive, and I'll let everybody make some adjustments, because, you know, maybe you didn't say what you wanted to say,
Yeah.
or, you know, there's a lot of different situations with it. And I like that, because then the dialogue still comes from those characters and those people. Sometimes you'll get someone that says, oh, you should say this there. You know, they give input on each other's things. But it keeps that personality of that character tied to the person. So it's very organic. That's the big thing that I want to keep throughout the entire story, is just the personalities, the relationships, because really, at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of friends doing stupid stuff, you know? And it just so happens to be the heroics and everything else that goes along with it. And we don't really run into many problems. There's some situations where one of the characters will want to say something that just doesn't fit, and then it comes down to like executive decision. Now that doesn't work. We can't say that. And that's very, very, very few and far between. But we do have one person who loves to just be like, I want to say something really stupid. And then we're like, no.
I think I got a good idea, because there's one character in particular that has a lot of one-liners.
Yep. You are probably correct.
So one thing I really loved and I remembered from our last talk is that there's really like a no holds bar with this. You are actively trying to kill these people in your story. So can you tell us a little bit about that mentality and why you chose to go that route?
Yeah. So as a dungeon master, I have a few different roles. One, I have to create the setting and the world that they're in. I have to create a fun environment for them to play in. And then I have to actively try and kill them and challenge them. Those are like my three things that I have to do. And so, yes, in every book, I'm actively trying to kill them. I've only succeeded a couple times. If you play D&D, you know that some DMs are, hard rules. Some DMs will bend and mold the team. I like to have fun. So if my guys come to me with something that's very reasonable and they can justify it, I can make it happen. So there's been some situations where I have two characters that go down pretty regularly, and they created a device that should allow them to heal. And they actually looked up like hard science things that are in the works. And they're like, but we have this science-based character, so he should, with his advanced intelligence, be able to make this work. And so, later on, that comes into play. And then I destroy it because I didn't like it. But I let him have it for so, yeah, I actively try to kill them. But I also try to create just a fun environment, because this is our one time a month to really get together, have fun, and do something we enjoy. We don't get together to write a comic book. We get together to have fun and play Dungeons and Dragons. It just so happens that it turns into a comic book.
Well, that is that. I think that's great, you know, because the one time out of the month, you know, everyone's looking forward to it. That's probably when you get some of the best like interactions throughout the group. You said earlier that you do about 90% of the work with this book. You know, what does that creative process look like for you? I know you said you listen to about 6 hours and you break down and storyboard it, but like when you're going through, let's say issue 5, for example, when you were doing that, what did that look like from start to finish?
Oh, wow. That's such a big...
Feel free if you want to condense it, feel free to condense it. You know, we have some time to kill, so feel free to go as in depth as you want to, man.
Book 5, I began working on book 5 when I was actually working on book 3. I try to work ahead of myself because I already know where a lot of the story's going. But again, sometimes there are pieces that don't make it to the final book. And I like to make sure that when I'm dropping subtle things in one book, that they can be picked up again. Like I'm an Easter egg person.
Mm-hmm.
I love, I like weaving a story. Even with the D&D game, you know, I weave the story within a story for them. And so I like to do that with the comic as well. So you might see something in book 2 or 3, and it might not even, you know, click with you, or it might be a character, it might be a situation, it might just be a line of dialogue. But then it doesn't make sense till book 5. And so if I put something in book 3 that I know doesn't come until book 5, I like to make sure that I connect them and it makes sense. So like I'll make notes for myself, like make sure this goes here, this is how this happened. I actually created a wiki page for all this stuff because I have so many different things that I can go in and I can reference when a character shows up. And yeah, book 5 was just a huge undertaking, and I knew it would be. I'm so proud of that book though, because if you look at book 1, when I started drawing, and a lot of people don't know this, but I actually taught myself how to draw to make the comic. I didn't know much about drawing prior to this. I'm just surrounded by a lot of phenomenal artists, so I was able to absorb information and learn. But when I was making that book, I was very single-minded. I put everything into the one story.
Mm-hmm.
And then I never thought it would really go anywhere, you know? So as I got into book 2 and 3, I was like, well, I know where we're going to be in 30 books from now. I need to start laying groundwork so that way some of this stuff doesn't come up, you know, out of left field. And some of the characters that show up in book 5 were in other books. So I really had to plan. And, you know, this is a geek show, so I can bring it up. I didn't want to pull a new trilogy of Star Wars and not have a plan. So yeah. I went in literally after I knew this was going to be a thing with book 2. I started planning out that first chapter because I wanted, if people were going to read this book, I wanted them to get a full experience. So like chapter 1, if you pick up the trade paperback, that's an experience. Everything's tied together. There are still loose ends that will pick up in book 6, 7, 8, because I like to do that. I like to keep you interested. Mm-hmm. But the main story, which in chapter 1, they're taking on this Masters of Mayhem, Alchemex. They're fighting this. That's their big bad. It's kind of like their origin story. You know, you take Marvel, they fight, you know, kind of different versions of themselves. If you think a big giant walking robot's a different version. You know, I really wanted book 5 to have this impact, to close a lot of questions, create more, and I wanted to have a lot of different elements. So that's why I took so long working on it. I wanted to have comedy. I wanted to have these dark elements that the story does have, because people think it's just fun and happy colors and yeah, they shoot things and they fight things.
It gets brutal.
Yeah, there's actual death in that book. There's you know, really tough topic, like the very last page of the book. You know, is a character that you know, ends himself by choice, given a choice, and that happened in the game. And so I had to make sure that when you were reading it, nothing felt forced, nothing felt chopped up, because that was 2 sessions. You know, that was 12
book, hours.
Yeah, 12 hours of us playing. There was a lot of heavy dialogue. That prologue where it kind of switches art style and goes back to that issue 0 art style. Nate did that. The prologue was originally going to be its own book because I had about 18 pages, but it was all dialogue based. So I kind of condensed that into those, I think it was about 10, 12 pages. I condensed it down, and I wanted to be a prologue because, a book just of them in a meeting room arguing for their freedom wouldn't have, there would have been some fun times, but I felt like it was such a good bookend,
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like it was a better closer than just a standalone. And so when I made that decision, that's how I had to get Nate involved, because as soon as I decided to do it, I was like, well, hey, if I'm going to have a prologue, we have issue 0, right? Which is Nate. He's the only other person to ever draw in the book. And then, I gave him the script for the prologue. And I was like, hey, I want to, when people read this book, they're going to open with your art and they're going to close with your art. And mine's like the filling in between.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a lot of work, because I can do my own books all day long because I have the script up here, But trying to take all that recording, putting it in my head, and then putting it into paper and giving it to somebody else, that's stressful.
Yeah, let's break some of that down, because you're used to being the one-man team, right? The illustrator, all of that. So how was that, like, sharing that that role and that responsibility with another individual? Like, how did you end up working out your scripts for them?
Well, luckily I had done it before with issue 0, but issue 0 I had kind of drawn out originally. It was kind of a rehash of something that I had created a long time ago, and so that one was a lot easier. This was harder because instead of rehashing something that I already done, I was storyboarding and creating something new. And being that they were in a meeting room for the majority of that piece, I wanted to give direction, different angles, what you see. And that was tough because when I'm drawing it, I can fix it. If I don't like it, I'll erase it and fix it. With Nate, he's in Australia too, so I can't continually send these things for edits. I went really heavily detailed. I gave him the dialogue. I gave him base dialogue. We wound up editing some of that later on, but I gave him how it starts, where it goes in the middle, and how it ends. And I gave him freedom to design the animal characters, because he's also the guy that designed Bones. And I said, hey, I'm not going to design these guys. I'm going to give you artistic freedom. Just one of them has to have a hat, one of them has to have a vest and a monocle. That's it. And he said, okay, cool. And he got it. And we sent probably a couple messages back and forth. He sent me some screenshots, like, hey, what do you mean here? Because there is, sorry, I saw my eye.
No, you're fine.
There's not a language barrier, but some of our slang here is different from them.
Mm-hmm.
And so he'd be like, what do you mean here? Okay, let me clarify. But luckily, being that I've worked with him before, we got it done very easily. It was just very nerve-wracking for me because I was like, this has to have impact. Yeah. There's a couple scenes in there that really they make the story going forward, and they also create tension later on. And I was like, I want them to really have an impact. And we edited the last page twice because originally there was going to be somebody else in there, and because that last panel actually that's a very important piece of the Crit story. I will just put it there, that character is very important to the overall story, and I had to have this doubt and these questions and this kind of subtleness there that some people will pick up, and if not, then in about 10 books they'll be like, oh wow, that's what that meant.
Okay, yeah, I love how you're laying that foundation like that and layering it like that for those payoffs.
It's important to me because I go by what I like. Some people might know this, some people might not. I was signed to a record label for a long time, and the reason I got out of music was because we stopped making music that we enjoyed. We started making music that we thought people wanted to hear, and that became no fun for me. So I want all of this to always be fun for me. I'm going to use and write the way, use elements that I like, I'm going to write things that I like, and hopefully everybody else likes it too. You know, and if you don't, well, I'm going to continue making it. So you might like something in there.
You know, I think I read something where it's like the same parts of your brain you use to create art are the same parts that you use for music as well. So that goes hand in hand. That's awesome. Man, you're just filled with all sorts of secrets there. You went from being on a label to creating books, man. How's that been, like, adventure-wise for you overall? Because this is your 7th book that you're coming out with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it was tough. I hadn't played music in about 10 years, and actually a little longer than that. And I was itching to like create stuff. I had my guitar for a while, but I hadn't played guitar in about a year, and I really had no creative outlet anymore. There for a while, I filled that void. I worked out all the time. I did bodybuilding competitions, and that was like being creative to me, was having routines and creating diet plans and doing that. But then I almost died and couldn't do that anymore. So yeah, that's a whole other story. You need another 45 minutes for that one. So when I started drawing, it just brought this energy out of me that I hadn't had in a long time. And even my wife was very supportive. She was like, well, you haven't been this interested in something in a long time. And it came very natural to me. And I like like you said, music and art, they come from the same side of the brain. And it's funny because I started my music career the same way I'm starting this career. I didn't know what I was doing. I lied that I told my band that I knew how to play guitar, and I didn't. I pretended like I did, got in the first practice, and they were like playing, and I'm just sitting there watching, strumming a little bit. And I'm like, oh, I'm just watching. I'm just trying to, this is my process. And the guitarist afterward pulls me aside. He's like, you don't know how to play, do you? Nope, not at all. He goes, I really like you. You're a cool guy. So we're just going to start practicing like every night together, and I'll teach you how to play. And he did. Over the course of about 6 months, I learned how to play everything he wanted me to play. And then within 2 years, I was doing my own thing.
That's crazy. That's crazy, though. Like, to be able to do that, especially like with an instrument like that, 6 months is remarkable, man.
We would start at like 4 and end at like 2 in the morning. And his name was Chris as well.
Fingertips were probably so sore, dude. You probably couldn't touch anything.
Oh yeah, but it was my punishment for lying to them. Very few guys in the band even knew because he didn't want to embarrass me. Mm-hmm. It was, him and I are still really good friends. I wound up leaving that band. We all broke up. We had a record label give us an offer that none of us liked. And we had been together for almost 4 years at that point. And, in 4 years, people can change. Your life, especially, we started that when I was 17. And so I was just about 21 when we left. I was just over 16 when I started. And everyone had started going in different directions. And, some of us were like, hey, I don't want to be in a van with any of you for 5 months. So we all parted ways. And then I moved to North Carolina. I gave myself a year from the time I moved here to get on a record label. We were on a record label in 6 months. And that record label got bought by Sony. So, it all wound up working its way out. And I guess doing well for us. We got on a work tour.
Wow. What type of music were you?
The early 2000s screamo metal stuff.
I had a early screamo band too. We had the opportunity. The reason we broke up, we had the opportunity to open up for I Declare War. Half of the band wanted to, half of the band didn't think we were ready, and we literally broke up because of that. You know what I mean? Because it was like why would you not take that opportunity? But
So I played a show once where the other guitarist put a second cab on my side, and I didn't even plug in. I just performed.
Hey, if you had the moves, that's all that's required. We have Dan Price over on YouTube stopping in to say, what's up, Chris? What's up, Cody? What's up, Dan? Welcome to the stream. How are you doing, man? Yeah, Dan is awesome. He is the man. So, let's get back to comics, though. So how did that all, what made you want to get into it? Were you playing D&D with the boys, or did D&D come from this idea?
God, they kind of go together. So in 2010, we tried to do a superhero game. It just didn't work. Like the superheroes are very overpowered if you're trying to play a traditional superhero, because everybody wants to be Superman. Oh, I should be able to do this. I should be able to do that. And creating rules and boundaries and limits on characters takes that superhero element and makes it no fun anymore, because now I'm not super. I'm still, ground level vigilante. And none of us knew how to balance that yet. We didn't really have a lot of experience in D&D at that time. Some of us did, some of us didn't. So 10 years down the road, it came from me playing Spider-Man. Okay, all of this came from me playing Spider-Man on PS4 and seeing the progression of the character there. And in my head, I was like, wait a minute. I can just make a bunch of characters like this, and everybody's character is different. They have a different power set, but they all level up the same way. And so that got my brain working, and I was like, okay, so in D&D terms, right? Your adventurer, say you're cleric, right? You have the power to heal people. You can do damage. You can do all these different things as a cleric. The only thing that makes him not super is the fact that everybody else in that world has abilities as well. So if you take the world with all these superpowered beings and you get rid of everybody else and just have one small group, now they're super. And so I said, all right, how do I do this? I made the game based off of them. They were playing themselves. They wake up one morning after an accident at work and they have superpowers. What do? That's exactly how I pitched it. And the comic book wasn't even a thing. It was just, hey, I really want to play superhero D&D because it sounds fun and you guys can play like yourselves. And I hang out with my friends for the first time in 10 years because some of us hadn't even talked in 10 years. And it was so much fun that I picked up my tablet that like 2 weekends later and I just sketched out like some parts of it. And when I say sketched, I'm being very nice to myself because it was just very sloppy, terrible artwork that I will never show anybody. And I said, okay, this is fun. And I say that, but when I drew it, I thought it was the most amazing thing in the world. And 3 months later, I made a book out of it. And that first book is at the end of the trade paperback that some people got in the last Kickstarter. And I showed that book to my wife, and she read the whole thing, and she looked at me and said, it's okay. My wife's a phenomenal artist. My wife and I were best friends for 11 years before being married. We were married for 4 years. So 15 years, and I get, after 3 months of hard work, it's okay. And not only that, but she didn't even look at me when she said it's okay, and she turned the TV back on. So it was like completely shut down, and I was like, well, I guess I gotta try harder. So I started book 1 the next day, and I never looked back.
And that's it's where the gorgeous, man.
Really came from.
Your hard work. I mean, like issue 5, came gorgeous foil. The interiors are gorgeous. I loved all the extras too. We have like trading cards, prints, stickers. Like, dude, you went all out with this campaign. So how does this lead to the next issue? Caffeinated Chaos, a D&D adventure story. Let's go ahead and put that pre-launch for anyone that is watching. And feel free, guys, to sign up to be followed. When is this going to go live, too, by the way?
Actually, I go live the same day as Dan, October 12th.
Oh, let's go. Yep. That's awesome,
We're doing a joint launch. It really is like the only day I can launch. I have this thing about launching on Wednesdays, and the next week we're going to be at Comic-Con, and then I have like all this stuff coming up at work, and I was like, well, if I push it off, I'm not going to be able to do it until April. So I need to do it October 12th. And we're at 49 signups right now. So I'd love to break 50. My goal is to have 75 signups before we launch on October 12th. So if anybody wants to jump in there and just hit the notify button, I will be announcing soon what those the day one backer rewards are, because I am going to do a cool little day one. And Dan and I are doing joint backers will get a print that's being done by Dennis Valencia. So if you back both our campaigns, you get this cool print by him. Yeah, we're trying a lot of different things in this one. But you asked how does book 5 transition to book 6? Well, at the end of book 5, Crit does become their own entity. They separate from their employer, and I won't give away why. Read the book. But they become their own entity, and so in D&D terms, I was like, cool. So you're leaving your cash cow, the people who pay for your weapons, pay for your bullets, because in D&D there is an economy, and I made it easy for them by having their employer be the one who pays for all their adventuring. And well, if you leave your employer, what are you going to do for work? And so they negotiate, a contract with the employer to be still on contract to do certain things, but they're free to do whatever they want without them. They don't have to answer them anymore. And I was like, okay, so we had this whole role play, and it's in the book where they get their money. And I'm like, so what do you want to use all this money for that you just negotiated? Like, you have a substantial amount of money, but now you also have no place to live because they paid for you for your housing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, we're going to open up a coffee shop. Of all things, we're going to open a coffee shop. And it's going to be a superhero coffee shop. And I was like, well, you don't have the money to, they bought the building so that way they would have a warehouse. And it's actually the building they almost destroy in issue 1. And so they buy this coffee house because it's attached to a warehouse. So they get the 2-in-1 deal. And then they're like, oh, well, we're going to open it. I'm like, well, now you need startup funds and all these other things. Well, screw it. We're going to turn our van into a mobile coffee shop, and we'll work on that until we raise enough money. And so in book 6, that's what they're really doing is part of their contract with their employer is they're still going to provide service to the city. So they're partnered with the city now. They're, local law enforcement can call them, and that gives their previous employer a bunch of bonuses and makes them look really good. But their real goal is just to sell coffee and energy drinks. And so that's what they're doing in book 6 is becoming small business owners and dealing with the drama of working in the back of a truck and all the
I love how different it is. I love how different it is. Like one of my favorite things about this is just how different each issue can be, and like the control you have with it. And then added the fact that it's a D&D game too, so it's you don't know what's going to happen until you play it, right? Like you don't know the outcome until the outcome happens.
I tried to control the outcome early on, and it never worked. So I gave up, and I just said, "Hey, here's a scenario. What do you do?" And that seems to be working very well because we all like the same things, and we've been playing D&D for so long. We don't have I don't want to say murder hobo because we do have one, but you don't have anybody that actively tries to derail your campaign. There are games I've played where someone just doesn't care and they just try to do everything to ruin the game. Everybody here really wants to have fun. They like the team. And I do believe that the success of the comic book so far has made them appreciate the game a lot more and their characters. When they're playing or when we're working on the book, it's so funny because they'll be like, oh, Caliber wouldn't say this, or like they own those characters so much. And it's made our game and our role play so much easier.
Do you find any issue though with them being maybe too much in character, like putting it on too much, knowing that it's going to be in a comic book, and taking away from that organic?
They actively try to screw with me. They try to push the limits to see what I will allow in the comic. Because I've already nixed a few things. So in the back of the issue as well, in the trade paperback, there's Caliber's Corner, and generally it's Caliber because he's the guy that got us all into D&D. So he's a DM. He's a lifetime DM, and he knows the rules in and out, and he loves to push the buttons. So when I remove something stupid that he's added to the campaign through sheer will and negotiation, and sometimes he just rolls really well, I still take it out of the book because he convinced me that I said it was okay one day to put a fire hose on top of the van that shot out like blisteringly hot coffee at people. And somehow I guess I let that happen, probably just for fun, because I was like, hey, whatever, we're playing a game, it'll be fun. I'll take it out of the book. And recently he's like, oh yeah, in a couple issues, doesn't my coffee truck show up? And I was like, that's not going in the book.
Yeah, nice try.
I had that. Yeah, I know you did. You had it for one session, and I took it away.
You
He's
had
like,
it
well,
because I allowed it.
yeah, and he's like, but it's totally functional, and he gives me the reasons of how it would work, and I was like, this isn't Ninja Turtles. You're not going to get that. He's like, Chris, it is Ninja Turtles. It's just with people. So Caliber's Corner exists for those stupid things that he continually tries to argue should be in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I put them in a comic strip at the very end of the book, so they exist, and either they're going to be hearsay, oh, did you hear that he did that, or they just, there's stories that exist out there that are still being told. So his shenanigans are, still forever put on paper, but they don't have to happen within our story and kind of derail what we're trying to do. But none of them really try to mess with anything. They'll mess with me. Their last session was like a week and a half ago we played, and they did something really stupid, and I put my head down. And actually right now I'm a player in the game right now. Brad's DMing because I won't get into why he's DMing. You'll find out in about 20 books. But I'm a player, and I have my own character, my own hero. And they do something really stupid in the game. I just put my head down. I'm like, oh man. They're like, you're mad because you have to draw that now, huh? I was like, yep, I got to figure out how to draw that. So they always put something in there that challenges my artistic ability.
How's it feel to be kind of behind the dice now, instead of being the one that's kind of the dungeon master, being one of the players now?
Yeah, I have a character that shows up. He's already been mentioned, actually. He was mentioned in book 3 and he was mentioned in book 5. I play the character 7. So he's a mysterious person right now, just by name, but he's been mentioned twice. I show up, I want to say in book 12 or 13, I'll show up. And I'm literally myself. I wear a suit, and I'm a chronicler. Like, my whole job is like keeping track of all the crazy stuff they do. So I get to play, myself.
You're like breaking the fourth wall almost, right?
Kind of. I wanted someone. So I there's a group that does show up towards, actually in book 7, they'll get brought up and introduced. And he's part of this secret group that knows more about Crit than they know about themselves. And is kind of confused as to how they're here now when they shouldn't be. So, just like, your kind's kind of extinct. How did you guys get powers? So I question a lot of things about them, but I'm studying them, chronicling them, because in my little group that I'm in, that's my job. Everyone has a different number, and if you ever watch Kingsman, everybody has a different role at the table, and so my character number 7 has the role of, babysitting these guys.
Oh, that is awesome! I love that.
Yeah, later on, I do, once I started playing, because, this organization does have lots of cool high-tech weaponry, and I described them as kind of like Men in Black-ish. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to be out in the field, I need weapons. And so I designed a character. I took the guy, and Brad was like, well, instead of making a new character to play, why don't you just take 7 and give him cool weaponry, and then you can play like the techie guy. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. So I get to have all these cool tech weapons, and now he's DMing me, and I was like, yeah, so I have this cool helmet, it does this. He goes, no, you don't. That wouldn't work. No, you're not going to. Like, damn it. So now I get
the roles are reversed.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's still my game, so I can.
It's going in the book either way.
I wanted this helmet that kind of like retracted and did this cool thing, and he was like, nope, you can't have it. I'm like, why? He goes, because that technology's stupid and I don't like he was just pulling a me on it. And so he required me to take the mask on and off. And I told him, I was like, when I draw this, I'm going to draw it with a retracting headset. And he goes, yeah, you're going to send me the artwork. I'm going to erase it and send it back.
Dang, savage. We have Dan Price over on YouTube saying, love the cover. I think the cover is gorgeous. Loving the colors as well, man.
Yeah, so the cover for book 6 was done by a good friend of ours, Lewis, who did some work for Dan as well. And I just shot the concept over to Lewis and was like, hey, can you do something like this? For book 6, the big giant robot, and it's holding 2 of the guys. And we went back and forth a few times, and the final outcome was just absolutely amazing. Really excited. And everyone's asking me, how does a big giant robot go in with caffeinated, this coffee truck idea, and I just just read the book. It'll explain itself. But yeah, so running their own coffee business ends up with them fighting a big giant 20-foot robot.
No, I love it. I love it. So I think right now is the perfect time for us to begin wrapping things up. So Chris, before we do that completely, what's next for you? Is it just going to be working on Crit as a whole, or you mentioned another D&D project that you were in the works?
Yes. So, as long as we hit the stretch goals, which we should, Mr. Wizard will continue to get published at the end of the next books. You'll get 4 pages at a time, and then when we have enough to make one book, I'll release it by itself. I really don't want to separate my fan base. I don't want readers to have to chase multiple books. Mm-hmm. In the indie community, it's really tough because you've got a lot of people with so many different stories. I want Crit to just exist. I want our story to exist here, and you get both their TV show side story in with the book. I don't foresee myself publishing that separately until we've hit that point. Crit is my focus. It will always be my focus because I've got 42 books planned, and
that is one hell of a run too.
We're only on book 7,
and it's 6 hours a book too, right? Like that is whoo. Oh,
we've got over 400 hours just in the creation of the game. We've been playing the game for 4 years, and we're at the very end of the story. That's one of the reasons why Brad and I switched was I wanted some elements in the end of the story that he's familiar with actually DMing, and I wanted to challenge the guys a little bit. He's better at challenge. I play like sometimes too nice, and he was like, "You need to challenge them." I'm like, "Well, then you do it." And we're at the very tail end of Crit right now. I'm actually getting ready to plan the next campaign after Crit. That's how close we are to release.
How's it feel? Is it like bittersweet?
It is and it isn't. I feel like we've told once this is over, we've told the story, and that is an accomplishment to me for a couple reasons. Most D&D campaigns don't go past 4 sessions, let alone 4 years. So that's a big deal to me that I was able to get 4 grown-ass men with wives and kids to dedicate 6 hours a month to playing Dungeons and Dragons. And then on top of it, creating a comic book, who I call them at least once a week with questions. So I'm annoying them for comic book stuff. I'm taking their time to play D&D, and not one of them has really backed down. So I'm glad to see it come to an end. And the next version of the story we're going to tell, or the next story that we're going to unfold, it's going to be in space, and it's going to be sci-fi, and the only rule that I was given was if I don't care what we do as long as there's magic. Austin Spector's character, he refuses to play anything but a magic wielder. So he's like, if you want me to play, you'll put magic in there. I'm like, but magic wouldn't exist in this story I'm telling. And he goes, well, figure it out. That's how I'll play.
He's like, you need 4 people.
Yep, and that's what he said. He was like, if you want me to play, you'll figure out how to put magic in there. He's like, I don't care if it's tech-based magic. As long as I can throw a fireball at something, I'm fine.
No, that is awesome. So Chris, before go ahead.
No, so that's just what I'm working on after Crit. But I don't foresee myself, unless somehow it explodes, because then I do have room for more ideas because the team will grow. But for right now, where we stand, we're just going to keep chugging along with these 42 books. And I really want to. I express that because I think it's important for people to know where the story's going, so that you can kind of get in and enjoy the ride, because every chapter is different, and like you said, every single issue stands on its own in its own little different world. So
Oh, that is awesome. So, Chris, before we wrap things up completely, you know the drill. I always love ending the show on a strong note, and that is asking you for a piece of advice. So I think with this time around, after hearing that, you put a tremendous amount of work into this, I think we got a nice question in particular. So for anyone that is watching that might be struggling with balancing their workload, fighting against burnout, you know what I mean? What would be your biggest piece of advice for that? As someone who's done 90% of the work for this, I'm sure you've had to fight that a handful of times.
Actually, yeah. End of book 4, beginning of book 5, end of book 5, even into now. I fight burnout like you wouldn't believe. I also work 2 full-time jobs and have a wife and kid. I'm doing a reunion show with my band in 2 weeks, and I work for a film company every here and there as well. So I'm extremely busy, and I get burned out on stuff pretty often. I just put it down. I care about everything that I do. I'm very passionate about everything I do. Doesn't mean I'm going to love it every single minute. And so if I hit a point where artistically I can't see it, I close it, I get fresh eyes on it. I'll turn my PlayStation on, I'll go read a book, I'll go watch Stranger Things. And that's really the thing that I try to do, is I go back to where my inspiration came from to begin with. And I'm always going to like Star Wars, the original trilogy. I'll love that till the day I die, because it just, as a child, it holds a special place in my heart, no matter how cheesy it can be sometimes.
Yeah.
Mass Effect, I'll play that. You know, if I'm really struggling, I'll go play Mass Effect and remember like some of the, you know, the memories of that will come back. Like, oh yeah, cool, I can do this. You know, or Metal Gear, or I'll sit and watch some kind of sci-fi with my wife. Stranger Things is like our show. I find something that I'm interested at that moment that doesn't have anything to do with my book, and I just do that until that spark comes back. Because when I'm in that mode where I'm around something that inspired me to begin with, I'm going to be reminded somewhere along the way, or inspired again, even if I've seen the show or movie 100 times. Something always clicks. I'm going to go, oh, I can do that. And then I'll go back to it. So if you get burned out, just go back to your roots, and, you know, go back to what inspired you to begin with, and just buckle down. It'll come back to you eventually.
No, I appreciate that. I think that is some awesome advice, and it definitely helps taking a step away, getting a breath, and kind of just getting rejuvenated, right? You got to rekindle that passion that keeps you going. Chris, thank you so much for coming on Breaking Crit Down. This was such an awesome show to get you back on. I'm very excited to hear that you're doing that reunion show. I bet is awesome getting up on the stage again, man.
Huge. My wife is actually taking on vocal duties. Our singer could not come back, and it's actually really cool to be able to share that with her. And,
yeah.
I think we may be sticking together after this and under a new name.
Oh, dude, let's go, man.
Yeah. Although my other guitarist is absolutely ridiculous. He works in a professional recording studio. He does some big albums that are out there right now. And yeah, so you know, we're tossing it around. We're looking in a few different directions.
Dude, let's go. That's so awesome. Congratulations on that.
They want to do like Periphery meets some kind of funk jazz stuff, meets a lot of really heavy breakdowns with some 80s female singing. I don't know how that's for that.
I'm there for that. You had me so to Periphery. Yeah, dude, congratulations. Well, everyone watching, it is New Comic Book Day. Here is the link to the sign up. We're looking to break 50 today, so just get in there, sign it up. You have nothing to lose. That being said, it is time for us to end. I hope you have a lovely Wednesday night, but most importantly, keep it geekly.